You're listening to Parents You've Got This, the expert guide to parenthood, the complete guide to fertility, pregnancy, birth, baby and parenthood. This podcast is proudly supported by Mistela, a natural origin skincare for babies and children, recommended by healthcare professionals. Mistela by Parents' Side since 1950.
Welcome to another episode of the Expert Guide to Parenthood podcast. We're your hosts, Christy and Freya, and we love talking about all things fertility, pregnancy, birth and parenthood. Today we're going to be talking about the mental load of parenthood. You know, the constant to-do list, that feeling like you're just drowning all the time with something that you need to do, a present you need to buy, some washing that's, notoriously ever building up. We're going to be talking about how that affects parents. So we are joined today by our psychologist expert, Dr. Carrie Haywood. Dr. Carrie Haywood has her own private practice. She is the published author of the Being Human book series, and she is mama of 3 gorgeous boys. So she lives this in her professional and her personal life all the time. Thank you, Carrie, so much for joining us.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's talk first about what we mean by the mental load when it comes to parenting.
So really with the mental load, we're talking about anything that's not the doing necessarily. It's what's going on internally. It's the thinking, it's the planning, it's the organising, it's the anticipating. So a lot of that kind of future thinking as well, and the sense of responsibility behind that too.
And with the mental load, do you think it, falls on one parent more than another?
Yeah, it's a good question. There is a tendency for it to fall on the mother, or at least the primary caregiver in the relationship. Obviously, there's exceptions to that, definitely, but there does seem to be that default parent that often is carrying that a little bit more.
And is there an emotional toll that goes with being that default parent who is managing all the things that are involved in the running of the household?
Look, absolutely. I mean, if you think about the impact that a lot of that thinking, that worrying, that constant I'm on, and not feeling like able to switch off in any shape or form has on our emotional state and our mental well-being. So it is going to take a toll, absolutely. And
what does that toll look like, Carrie, always being the default parent or the one that's carrying the biggest mental load?
So, look, it can show up in many different forms. What we'd be looking for is sort of any indicators around the person feeling and experiencing that heightened level of stress or anxiety or even exhaustion. And then sort of behaviourally it can come up as well. So with the toll of the mental load, you might start to notice some tension in the relationship as well, and that typically takes the form of some resentment and irritability, where really it's the parent feeling that there's an inequality there or an imbalance, and so it definitely shows up in our reactions that way too.
Yeah, and it can be hard to stay present, I find, like when I've got my constant mental to-do list going, if I bought that birthday present, I've got the washing to do, there's parent teacher, did I pay for that basketball uniform, there's a present now for the end of year for that basketball coach. It's all those sorts of things constantly going on in your mind that then sometimes even with your own kids, I find they come up and talk to me. They're like, Mum, are you listening? And it's like, I'm here physically, but mentally I'm up here. Do you find that, Ray?
Yeah, I do.
It's really hard. It's almost like your brain just has to get split into multiple pieces of the bit that's, you've got your bit that's reacting and then you've got your internal dialogue going on as well. So, Carrie, you talked about how it can build resentment in relationships. Do you have any suggestions for how we can go about talking to our other half about it, whether, for either side they're on, maybe we feel like we're the parent that is carrying the higher mental load, or perhaps we can see in our partner that they're carrying the higher mental load and we want to, talk about it in a way that's really positive for both?
Yeah, and so really the first and primary thing to do is to make that mental load, that invisible load, visible. Yeah. So
leave the washing in like neat little piles. That's what I do. I seriously do that sometimes. I like fold it all up and just leave it there, not to like put away or anything, but just so it's like, hey guys, can you see I've just done 2 hours of washing. It's all folded up nicely, but still no one puts it away. I end up putting it away just half an hour later. But I can always see to myself, look at all the work I've done.
Yeah. I had an experience just an hour ago where one of my sons said, but I don't have any socks, even though the piles are there. Yeah, so it's very difficult, very difficult. So yeah, look, absolutely. Those indicators, even just, it sounds quite sort of contrived and a little bit unnatural, but writing a list of everything that's up here and getting it down on paper. We can be even more kind of specific and detailed about that, where we may even map out how long these things take us as well. Yeah. But as I said, particularly that the thinking side, because we obviously can't see that. The other person can't see that. And, this can be particularly important when there's kids that, may even have special needs. And again, just thinking about all of the things that are required day to day and the anticipation. It's the future. It's the future thinking that's a big part of it, because, again, we can't necessarily see that. So mapping it out, and then obviously, they're talking about it and seeing where we might be able to kind of divvy it up a little bit different and share that responsibility a little bit more. So it's not just the doing that's shared, it's the planning and the preparation that's also shared. Yeah.
Yeah, I find that hard too. Like when someone, say, goes to the supermarket, they're doing the manual labour of going to the supermarket, but then they ring you and say, what do we need, or what's for dinner? It's like, I don't know, I can't think of what's for dinner like 7 nights a week. But then when you do map it out, it's actually quite amazing.
That's like, kind of the easier bit. Yeah,
3 meals a day. Yeah. What are we eating for those 3 meals? What do we need in the pantry? It's the admin of all the sporting, the school, working out all of those things, the birthday party planning, who's going to take someone, pick them up. It's all those mental to-do list things. But it is quite amazing when you actually plan it out on a list and you see how long each of those tasks take. You think, no wonder the default parent's so tired, because it does actually take a really long time to get all of those things done. Yeah.
I think too, it's one of those interesting things where you have, obviously we carry these lists in our heads, and I think inevitably, all carers carry lists, but we can't feel resentful for something if we're not talking about it.
Yes.
And so it's so important to, I think, recognise that everybody is carrying a load, and unless the load is out there, then it's impossible to share that load, and it's impossible to appreciate the load that someone else is carrying. And I think inevitably in any relationship or with any group of carers of any description, they're all carrying a different load. So being able to talk openly about it. Carrie, can you give us sort of some conversation starters for actually having those conversations?
Yeah. And it's such a good point, Freya, because not only, as you say, are those loads different, and we can easily fall into the trap of, well, mine's bigger than yours.
Yes.
Which then, as you say, builds the resentment. And another thing that I often see as well is a parent making the comment of, well, they should know. They should just do it. I shouldn't have to ask. And so being able to kind of step out of that a little bit too, and just not have that assumption. Yeah. But in terms of conversation, look, it's probably the same as any conversation that's potentially a little bit confronting, a little bit difficult. There's emotions there. There's often a lot of past stuff that comes up. And so really what we want to be able to start with and bring focus to is really what you've referred to, in that let's actually acknowledge what we are doing well, acknowledge what is working, acknowledge what the other person is doing. And if we start off in a place of acknowledgement, then we're starting off that conversation from a place of joining, rather than what can be easily interpreted as attack. Of you're not doing this, you're not doing that. And if we go into that mode, then we just get defensive. That's what we're hardwired for. So if we can, start it off of, let's acknowledge what we are doing well, what the other person is doing, and then go into, and where can we make some changes here. the pathway of that conversation is going to be completely different. Exactly.
I mean, it's positive from the start because you're wanting to find a solution together rather than coming at it from or aggressive. And neither of those are going to achieve the same outcome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I think it sort of happens to the default parent because often someone takes parental leave and they didn't have those jobs before having children, and then suddenly all of those jobs fall onto them. So previously, before having kids, you might both have cooked, both have done the dishwasher, both have done washing, and then suddenly the load has increased because you have more washing, more food preparation, whatnot, and then they take that up because the other partner's gone to work, and then you go back to work, and then now you're both working, but you just haven't relinquished some of those things.
Yeah, it's so true, Christy. I was having this conversation with a client just yesterday. I think you're right, because the roles are often biologically imbalanced from the beginning, depending on the relationship, of course. And so it's unavoidable that there's going to be a little bit of an imbalance, or it's just going to look different with that load. And so it's learning to actually acknowledge that and then work out how you can start to shift that a little bit over time. But rather than being resentful of, well, why do I have to do this and why do I have to think about this, sometimes that's out of our control initially. Yeah,
and writing a list is really important too, and having those conversations, because sometimes you find that something that really bothers you doesn't bother your partner. So for example, I'd be like, the sheets just take me so long. By the time I do everyone's sheets, for like all I'm doing is sheets. We've got 6 beds or whatever that we're changing, but then my husband's like, I don't care doing the sheets, I'll just do the sheets on a Saturday. And it was like no big deal to him to do the sheets, and now he does the sheets all the time, and I like put them on or whatever, and it's such a huge thing off my list. It was nothing on his list. So it's really good to sort of sometimes put those things down, whereas I can fold socks. He hates doing that. I just fold socks. So it's like quite good to just have those conversations and be brave to have them.
Absolutely. And I think what you're also touching on there is there's some things that are just going to be more important to one person in the relationship than the other. And so what's really helpful is also a reframe, because so much of our language around this stuff is I have to, I must, I have to remember this, I have to do this, I have to. And a lot of those things aren't actually have to's. And so a reframe of, well, maybe we're actually choosing to do a lot of those things as well, and choosing to plan and choosing to organise and prep, because maybe that's important to us, maybe that makes us feel better, more organised. Ideally, we still want some flexibility of that, because that's endless. And so we can't, we've got to be careful of doing that too much. At the same time, that might be something we're choosing to do because that's our style, that's our personality style, that's our parenting style, and it may not be the same as the other parent. Yeah,
that's so true. And even down to, the standards that we hold to ourselves, like the frequency of changing the sheets, or the, whatever these things might be. Being able to have those sort of conversations. Do you have any tips for perhaps how to let go of things that, aren't those must-dos? And, how to sort of, I guess, advocate for the things that are important and to share the load.
And it's a really good question, because it's not going to ever just look one way. As you say, well, what are the have-tos? What are the things we can let go of? It's sprinkling in some flexibility wherever we can. And probably the best way to know if we are being too rigid or the expectations or standards are too high is when they start getting in the way of something else that matters to us. So if we are preferencing making sure I have to finish the washing, or I have to have, the lunch is prepared for, or whatever, and that's starting to sacrifice something else that matters to us, which might be our own time, which might be time with our partner, which might be time with our kids, just as you say, being present and just actually, meeting what their need is in that moment, which funnily enough is probably not to have their lunchbox perfect the next day. They might enjoy that, but they probably would actually just prefer spending time. So that's probably the best sort of way to think about that boundary. Is, okay, well, when does it start actually interrupting something else that matters to me? And then otherwise, as I said, it's that reframe of choosing to do whatever it is we're doing because of what matters to us.
And Carrie, do you find that a particular parenting style has a bigger mental list?
Yeah. So we're probably starting to touch on that in what we were just talking about with Typically, the personality style is when the control mode is a little bit higher. So we all do have a need for control as human beings, but in some personalities that is even more sort of rigid and heightened. And what that can present and show up in terms of that perfectionism. And obviously there can be typically a higher experience of anxiety around that as well. Compared to, say, a personality style that is typically a bit more relaxed, present, doesn't tend to kind of plan and think ahead as much and doesn't therefore typically have higher expectations on what they should be doing. So, yeah, there can be those differences in personality. And if you're finding yourself have that experience in other areas of your life, it's probably going to be the same in parenting as well. Yeah.
So, Carrie, if we feel like, we can't keep all the balls up here, we're not wanting to keep all the balls up here because we're starting to sacrifice things that are really mattering to us, what strategies can we use to feel at peace with that, to feel like it's okay that, we can't do it all? Is it that we just pick a few balls to keep in the air and just let the others go? Or what would you recommend?
Yeah, I think that's a good start is looking at all the balls and going, okay, which ones can I let go of, can I put down? And that will be an ongoing day-to-day kind of judgment as well. And then maybe it's also recognising that maybe we're not dropping some balls, maybe the balls are being dropped. There's a difference in what we don't have full control of, and externally what kind of influences and factors are contributing to us feeling like we're not being able to do that as best as we can, or as, if we're forgetting things or whatever. Maybe that's not entirely in our control because of how much stuff there is. And so, yeah, because it's a very easy judgment to put on ourselves. I'm dropping balls. Well, are we actually dropping balls, or are some of those balls inevitably just going to drop because we can only have so many balls in the air at once? And so just letting go of some of that self-blame as well. Yeah. But it is a day-to-day thing we just need to be constantly aware of. And so, yeah, which ones can I let go of? Which ones am I choosing again for them to be there because of what matters? And which ones do I not have control that might just fly away?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I always think that, and it's good advice my husband actually gives. It's like, well, what can we not do? Like, if you're feeling like there's a billion things to do, what ones can we just not do this weekend?
Yeah.
Do we have to go out for dinner with those people, or do we have to get that washing done, or whatnot? What is an essential thing to do, and what things can we not do this week?
Exactly.
Oh, well, Carrie, thank you so much for coming on the Expert Guide to Parenthood podcast to share all your time and expertise with us. We love having you on.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure as always.
A huge thanks to Mistella for sponsoring this episode. Mistella empowers parents throughout their parenting journey with education and honest conversations from pregnancy and beyond. Mistella has plenty of parenting articles and resources on their website. Visit mistella.com.au. Mistella is our family's favourite.
And thanks so much for tuning into the Expert Guide to Parenthood podcast. We've got an entire library of episodes with all of your parenting needs in there. And if we have got something that you really want to know about, we'll get the expert in to talk about it. So make sure you DM us so we can record an episode on the topic that you care about.
Never forget, parents,
you've got this.
Join a Parents You've Got This masterclass today to be prepared, excited and educated for pregnancy, birth, baby and parenthood. Visit www.parentsyou'vegotthis.com.au and sign up for a masterclass today.
The information provided in this podcast is general in nature and is intended to support, not replace, a discussion with your doctor or healthcare professional. Parents You've Got This take no responsibility for any medical decisions made by individuals based on the information provided in this podcast.